Hello, patrons. This is a quick check-in to say hi and talk a little bit about my Champions Now project with a focus on killing. I talked about this in previous videos, in blog posts, all sorts of things. And so, first of all, some of you may not be involved with Champions at all, don't really know the system or care. I still think it's a really interesting case study for game design that I think everyone here will be interested in. It's also complex historically, and it's also, well, this is a bit of a rehearsal perhaps. We can get a discussion going here that can help me make a video for what is admittedly a bunch of contentious and variably expectant pledgers for the Kickstarter that I have to cope with. So here we go. The first thing to understand is that Champions was built as a superhero game on a scale of getting lots and lots of dice. And you rolled a lot of dice, and the primary damage was against somebody being knocked out, which was back then kind of a big deal, very different than being killed. So that's one thing. So you had a defense that was tuned to cope with that. And that was real straightforward. Spend more points, more dice, spend more points on defense, more defense. There you are. And a variety of subroutines about that, about being temporarily stunned, about recovering, and stuff of that kind. All right. You also had, running in parallel, the development of related games that were grittier. Games like Danger International and things like that. And so basically where people are shooting things up with guns, you also have the issue in the comics that you want a gun to be scary. When the Punisher pulls out a gun, everybody goes, ooh, and ducks. Well, here's the thing. First of all, superheroes are never killed by bullets being fired at them by some random schmo, so there's a bit of a mismatch there. Second, the folding together, the idea that this other set of philosophy about guns that's being developed in these other games and becomes part of Champions development as well, is very difficult at that time. I've blogged about this before. What does killing mean in the superhero comics was undergoing a big shift. Well, I want to focus on the mechanics. Boils down to the idea that you have a completely parallel track of damage delivery, point spending, and harm to the character. And not to put a fine point on it, it's broken. It's too cheap. You get a die of killing dice, killing attack dice, for 15 points, which is 3 times as much as a die of damage costs in the regular damage system. And you would think that that would be, pretty expensive. Well, not only is it not expensive enough relative to the damage it does as soon as you get over an important threshold. The important threshold is 3d6. Why? Because the average amount that you roll is about 11 on 3d6, and you're counting the pips on the dice. And so, therefore, with 3d6 of killing attack, you are doing just about enough on the average with a nice solid bell to hit somebody with the right amount of body damage to kill them, because the default body score is 10. 3d6 killing attack is basically a one-hit kill. Well, wait, what about the defenses? Well, that's kind of interesting, because the way killing attacks work in Champions, not only do they do this heinous amount of body, they also go straight through defenses. They ignore defenses. You have to buy up defenses and buy special defenses in order to defend against them. So you see what you've got here. You've got a differently budgeted, vastly more dangerous, vastly more takedown oriented set of damage over here. So in order to play Champions at all, and bearing in mind that now you're running around arming everybody with 3d6 rifles, you're going to go up against thugs in the street, they're going to level 3d6 rifles at you. So everybody all of a sudden has to armor up. All of the characters basically ignore the regular damage system. Doesn't matter that you can punch somebody for 96 or 12d6 or something like that. What matters is how much body do you do that is only stopped by resistant defenses. So it's a completely parallel system. The points are different, and ultimately they're cheaper. I should point out there were a number of other nifty tricks you could pull with power frameworks and things like that, so that these attacks cost very, very little energy to deliver. So you basically have a completely different system, which is highly lethal, drops characters in their tracks, and all of a sudden play has to be riding on a bedrock of, I have this many resistant defenses. If you don't have 10 points of resistant defense available at all times, just no endurance cost, you just have it. If you don't have that in Champions by the late 80s, then your character drops dead in the first round of combat because they get nailed with a 3d6 killing attack and probably is going to do 10 points of damage, and they have 10 body and down they go. Now, death was very, very generous. There was no rule that actually killed your character. The worst your character could be was dying. And even if like a toddler like accompanied your character at that point, your character could conceivably live. Although the wording is a little bit vague at that point. So, it's funny, I actually imitated that precise system for Sorcerer years and years later, and that had fallen out of the rules set and out of play habits so far that people had no idea what I was saying. I thought I was just calling back to a system everybody knew. Well, anyway though, even though that generosity is there, the point being that you lose, you're down, you're out, is fixed. So, unless you want your characters being effectively those wussy heroes who show up in their spandex and then Wolverine just goes chonk and down they drop, then you need to armor up. So, to play Champions, ever since that time, is effectively synonymous with, does my character have 10 points of resistant defense on call, in place, for an ambush attack, doesn't have to know about it, doesn't have to spend any energy for it, is it there? And also sporting some attack of that kind. You need that. You need to be able to respond in kind. The other character that is attacking you is certainly going to be, ready for this kind of thing, but you need to get level the playing field and be able to fling that attack, get them to have to spend those points as well. So it's just basically a huge escalation and plateau that creates the chassis of this kind of heavily armored, killing attack oriented Champions play. Well, all that said, I've bagged it. It's one reason why it was always hard to alter, was because that secondary or parallel system was actually quite tight and clarified among its parts. And so the idea of adjusting it or tweaking it or anything like that relative to the first system, which people have tried more than once, it doesn't work. They simply are operating in completely different currency exchanges. And so you just got to play with the one because it has more severe consequences, and the other one just rides along as window dressing. All right. Well, too bad. I decided that plan A is what we go with, and we bag the other one and just do other things to get to Wolverine-y stuff. First things first, yes, you can get through ordinary defenses for the knockout damage, and yes, you can get through ordinary defenses for the body damage, but you're going to have to pay for it. Each one. They pay more points. And you're using the old system of body counting on the dice, so therefore you're really not doing much per die, 0, 1, or 2 points per die. So in order to get a consistent killing attack of the old school that is going to hit for 10 body on the average, you're going to need 10 dice that are both severe and lethal. And that will come to about 100 points. That's a lot in Champions terms. And if somebody says 100 points for... You see, the trouble is they're thinking of that attack as a default, as something every character should just have and slide in their back pocket. And I'm saying, no, it's not. Yeah, Wolverine spends 100 points in order to do that to people. He just does. And a couple of other interesting points is that I've stripped away the defense score from non-superhero characters. So that means if you want to be the Punisher and blow a guy's head off, that's fine. An ordinary attack, a fairly hefty one, will do it. You're just not going to be able to do that to Daredevil. It'll just miss him. Or, crease his costume for one of those romantic little blood trickles. So the idea here is that if you want that kind of effect, it is present, it is barely affordable. It would have to be a massive signature thing for your character in order to be able to do that, which makes perfectly good sense. I like it where it is. Nobody else will. Everybody is so accustomed to, I've got to have my 10 points of resistant defense because everybody's packing a 3d6 killing attack. It's gone. I've reduced defenses drastically. Force field is only, you're only getting 2 points of force field for 5 points. Used to be 1 for 1. And you are only getting no endurance resistant defenses for 5 points for 1 point. So basically, characters are expected to be running around with maybe 4 or 5 points of resistant defense. Arguably, they could get away with not too much. The way I'm handling guns in the hands of non-superheroic characters is not as guns in the hands of non-superheroic characters. I have made it very clear the game does not scale below a certain level. You don't build normal people with this system. Instead, such things in the circumstances are going to be considered by the hazard rules, and you will address them as hazards, not as a character running around with a speed score and with a dexterity score and with a combat value and with options and stuff like that. Those characters are not being played in that sense. They are hazards of the moment that are present in the situation. So I've solved the problem of, oh no, what will I do if 10 police officers, the SWAT team shows up and draws a bead on me? That's the huge fear of all Champions players historically. The SWAT team shows up, they take up formation, they draw a bead on you. What are you going to do? Well, I've got to have my 10 points of resistance or else they're just going to plug me and I'm going to be dead. Here, no. That's a particular kind of hazard. We have rules for handling hazards, and it's not a matter of coping with that particular rule situation anymore. In the hands of a superhero character, guns and so forth, yes, that's an interesting question, and I'm dealing with it. But the point being that no longer can somebody pay a paltry amount of points, especially kludge through things like multi-powers and charges and stuff, and basically, with a shrug, plug your character for their entire bank of body points in one shot. Without that, play changes dramatically. Play really should be about whether I am going to be knocked out and not whether I am about to die in one hit. So, there you go. Those are some of my thoughts. Lots of nuances to the rules, so Champions heads, you just jump right on in and ask. And I believe that's that for now. Tell me what you think.